All right, YouTube, it's time to weigh in on the early stages of Trump's building of his cabinet and sort of these advisory positions. Generally speaking, with this last round, I'm quite happy about that. Jeff Sessions is sort of neutral. My feelings towards him are lean towards being positive, but at the same time, just regular Republican, so nothing bad about it, but nothing particularly great. What I will say is that having General Flynn there as an advisor, I'm quite happy about that. I think that's a good position for him to be in. They were worried, apparently, they wanted him for some other position that would have had to be vetted by the Senate, and they decided against that because the Congress doesn't really like Michael Flynn because he's seen as like too aggressive or something like that. He speaks off the cuff. Generally speaking, I thought that Trump should have chosen him as a VP. I would have liked him in an even higher position. The fact that he's going on the cabinet, yeah, that's fine. I would have liked it if he had been VP instead of Mike Pence, honestly. And I think specifically because of the vice presidential debate might have been why they kept him off. This is a person who essentially is a centrist Democrat for the most part. Maybe a little bit jumbled on the war issue, but at the same time, Trump has his own feelings there. It's just an advisory position. Generally speaking, is not socially backwards, not like an Evangelo Con or something like that. So that would be a good thing. Trump also scores for kicking Chris Christie fucking off of his transition team. Chris Christie is embroiled in scandal right now, and I can't think of anybody less qualified ultimately for a cabinet position than Chris Christie. People were making a joke about him being appointed to the Supreme Food Court. Very funny. No more Oreos for you, Christie, essentially. You'd have to get some other snack at the food court. But yeah, Chris Christie is a blowhard. It was funny watching him against Marco Rubio when he completely laid waste to him at, I think it was the third Republican debate or maybe the fourth. That was funny. He can be a funny guy. But he is a blowhard, and he is corrupt. He's also the face of the establishment at sort of big city level in state politics within the northeastern region. Even people in New Jersey don't generally like Chris Christie. There would have been no benefit to having him continue on the transition team. I think it was Pence's idea to kick him off. Probably a good decision. So having Christie out, Flynn on, Sessions on, those are pretty good things. Ben Carson apparently was offered his choice of Surgeon General or some other cabinet position. He said, no, I don't, I'm not qualified or I don't want the position. Good on him, by the way. Most people would have gobbled it up in an instant. Yeah, Ben Carson, I could think of worse positions than Surgeon General for Ben Carson. I know he doesn't have any political experience. I think what Trump's trying to do is he realizes that other people in D.C. are still kind of nervous about the fact that he has no political experience. So he's trying to stack up people that he can count on, number one, to be loyal, and number two, who aren't full-on insiders, like Flynn's not a full-on insider, but at the same time who do have some sort of experience within where he's trying to put them. One thing I will say, this is a miss for Trump on his cabinet building. Even meeting with Mitt Romney is a bad idea. I know he wants to be conciliatory, but his core fans desperately hate Mitt Romney just as much as Mitt Romney apparently, at least during the primaries, really hated Donald Trump and a lot of his fans. He's basically a Clintonian Republican or a Bushite Democrat. They're the same thing. He's a full-on neocon, a fiscal neocon, with a little bit of war hawking, maybe less than the Clintonians or the Bushes, but, it's only mildly tempered. He's not well received. If I was Donald Trump, I wouldn't be meeting with him. I'd call him in and say, I have no problem with you, whatever. It's just campaign mode, sort of banter and so forth. But I wouldn't appoint him to Secretary of State. This is the most high-profile position he's going to fill. And so far, he's talking about people like Mitt Romney and Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani would be preferable to Romney. And Michael Bolton, who he's also mentioned, would be an absolute unmitigated disaster. I wouldn't let Bolton get anywhere near my cabinet if I was the President of the United States. Giuliani of those three would be the best, and also probably the most notable figure. But at the same time, can't he cast around and try to find somebody else for that position that will pass the Senate's vetting process and not piss off his core fans like Romney or potentially be a duplicitous warmonger like like Rudy Giuliani or John Bolton. I'd like to think, I hope he's just trying to fake people out by mentioning a bunch of establishment names and like career politician names, and he's actually going to name somebody totally different to the position as far as what he wants. I hope that's the case. Giuliani I could at least tolerate, although it's not great. It's sort of like Mike Pence as VP. Mike Pence was tolerable compared to the idea of VP Chris Christie, but was still lower down on the list than people like Flynn or even Gingrich at the time. I think Newt Gingrich would arguably make a better Secretary of State than the people that he's mentioned so far. Can't he look around and find somebody else? And by the way, there are petitions calling on him to fill the role of the Secretary of the Treasury with Ron Paul. I support it. I think it would be a great idea. Put Rand Paul, by the way, as Surgeon General. He is a doctor. He has been a surgeon, specifically an eye surgeon. He knows about medical things. He's a quasi-libertarian, or at least a paleocon. Yeah, you could do where I think both Pauls should have cabinet positions. Ron Paul should have one. They've talked about Ron Paul for Secretary of State. Now, I'd put him in the Treasury and tell him, okay, go after the Fed, go after the bankers that are ruining our economy. Here's you can have unlimited power, just join the dark side or something like that. That'd be a great thing. Oh, there's no way that you could get the youth more riled up in favor of Trump than to have Ron Paul, even if it's just a strictly advisory capacity that he's operating in. Having him anywhere near your cabinet would be a net positive for him. Rand Paul, too. Jim Webb. Jim Webb would make an excellent person to put. I understand he's like a lifelong Democrat, but it's fairly clear he's not a Democrat in the sense that Obama or Clinton or the other neoliberals are Democrats. It's like a JFK Democrat. He's got more in common with Trump than he does most members of his own party. Jim Webb, Ron Paul, Rand Paul. Amash, Justin Amash would do a good job. He's talking about Ted Cruz maybe for Attorney General. While he is technically on paper qualified for that position, he's also a desperate evangelocon that has a deep and ongoing feud with you, Mr. Trump. I think you should probably find somebody else. Again, tolerable in theory, but at the same time, so many of his core fans just so desperately hate people like Cruz and choose Rubio. Rubio at least had the grace to endorse you without going to the convention and then refusing to do so. Rubio would be a good choice for one of these positions. Put him in your cabinet somewhere. Even if it's seen as a kickback for an endorsement, at least he's generally seen as likable. A lot of people thought that Rubio's feud with Trump was more funny than anything else. They didn't think it was like corrupt so much as it was hilarious to watch him fail. With Ted Cruz or Romney, they see it as systemic corruption. There's a big difference involved. But yeah, Jim Webb, Michael Flynn being there as an advisor, good job, good choice. Jeff Sessions, yeah, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not quite as good as having Flynn there. But at the same time, yeah, he's a solid figure. He's got the chops for such a job. I'm not sure about that dude he's optioning for head of the CIA because I don't know anything about him, so I'm not even going to weigh in on that at the moment because I haven't bothered to research the position or the person yet. Maybe tomorrow or sometime I'll do that. But no, Mitt Romney, yeah. I didn't want him as president, so I'm not sure I would want him as Secretary of State. Sounds a little bit like having Clinton back in the position to me. I would put Jim Webb in there. I'd make him Secretary of State in a heartbeat. I think it'd be hilarious. The Democrats would be at a loss to not like the dude. Certainly all of Trump's allies within the GOP would vote for him within the Senate, plus most of the Democrats. It'd be almost unanimous. Yeah, you'd have people like McCain, not warmongering enough, doesn't want to bomb enough countries or something like that. Who cares? That's the old guard of the GOP. They're dying off anyway, literally and figuratively, within votes, and they're getting old enough to stroke out and die. So who cares if these people like your choice for Secretary of State? But I don't think any of his younger fans like, woohoo, Romney, yeah, that's a great Secretary of State. This is a person who's really going to do a good job. No, he resembles Clinton and Kerry. Giuliani is a better choice. Not great, but better than Mitt Romney. Romney being even better than Bolton. Bolton's the worst possible choice. If he chooses Bolton for that position, what the fuck is going on in Donald Trump's head at this point? Did he go back on his promise never to do drugs or drink, and he was just visiting Colorado or something like that? Or did he go to Washington State or Alaska and pick up a pound of marijuana and just go in one session? He just was completely flat out of his mind, stoned or something? Because you'd have to be kind of stoned to think that John Bolton, the premier neocon warmonger Iraq War era goofball, Bushite Republican inside establishment figure, would make a good Secretary of State. Romney, at least, is just a more of a fiscal conservatard, so that's more tolerable. Giuliani, he's a respectable individual, not great, but generally respectable. Somebody like Jim Webb, yeah, even Ron Paul. I would choose him, again, I would choose him for the Treasury more than I would for the Secretary of State's position. I think he wouldn't necessarily do particularly well in that role. But having Ron Paul, yeah, anywhere on the cabinet, even if it's head of the Dog Catchers Association or something like that, some meaningless little advisory position, yeah, have him there. And make a big deal about the fact that he's been put there. And all of those Ron Paul voters, a lot of who were never Trumpers or voted Johnson or something, yeah, they'll climb right back on board with the Trump presidency. Be a good choice. And again, Rand for like Surgeon General, if he accepts such a position, yeah, put him there. Use Rand, use Ron Paul, use Jim Webb. You got a lot of talent here that sort of crosses party and ideological lines. You can cobble them together. You don't have to simply allot every position to some Republican insider because people like McCain or Boehner want you to. It's not necessary. So yeah, so far his cabinet's stacking up, it's pretty good. If he chooses, like, again, Secretary of State Bolton or Romney, that will be a significant net negative, and then it'd be a mediocre cabinet at best. Not that it matters quite as much as Trump himself, and I'm still peeved about the fact that Mike Pence is VP, because I don't even like Mike Pence. Well-spoken, yes, did very well at the debate. Good campaigner, yeah, obviously is able to take initiative and sort of balance out the fact that Trump is learning as he goes along because he's never held a political position. But at the same time, some of these positions you should allot to people who are not establishment Republicans. It's a terrible idea to choose somebody like Bolton or Romney for the position of Secretary of State. No matter how much experience they supposedly have, it would be a terrible choice. That's about all. Peace out.